What's up, everybody? So today we're working on the Kumai build, and the goal for today is to make the handle scales. We are going to be layering black G10 and copper to make these handle scales. I wanted to stay with the layered theme with this build, so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to be doing a 16th inch black G10 copper, 16th inch black G10 copper, and then an 1/8 of an inch black G10. It'll all make sense whenever I actually get them all put together and we start shaping them and do all that stuff. The goal is to have a punch of copper running through the black just as an accent, and I want that cool contrast between the polished copper and 15 and 20 blade with the dark scales, and then all of the layers that run down the spine, which you can't really see that much right now, but they're right there. So all of the layers are going to stand out in between those black scales right there. So I think that this is going to be a really unique set of scales. I think it's going to match this theme, and that's what we're going to work on today. So let's jump into it. So we're going to start this off by sanding everything that we're going to be attaching together. And what we're using here is a 220 grit sandpaper. And the reason behind that is if you go too rough, like a 36 grit, you end up putting real deep scratches that end up showing whenever you start, getting ready to do the finish work on the scales. Those deep gouges will actually show up in the layers, and it won't leave you real crisp lines. So you want to use a sandpaper that's rough enough to create the scratches and remove the shiny glossiness of the scales, so that the epoxy does have something to stick to, but you don't want to go too rough that it ends up hurting your end result. So that's what we're using 220 for, and whenever we get all of these all sanded up, then we're going to go ahead and start gluing them together. Now, in between this and that step, I did clean everything with acetone. So we sand them, we clean them, and then we start gluing them together. And what I'm using to glue them together is 5-minute epoxy by JB Weld. And what I do here is I make sure that everything gets mixed up very well. The last thing you want is to have issue with your glue not hardening or something after you go and put 6-7 hours into a set of scales with shaping and hand sanding and all that. That's just a nightmare. So much work for something that could have been fixed by just making sure that your glue was mixed up real well. And whenever I am layering these together, I'm just putting a very light coat of glue on each layer, because if you go too crazy with this, you end up with just a whole bunch of squeeze out and a real large mess. So we're trying to make sure that we just have enough to create the mechanical bond, but also to not have a whole bunch of excess that we have to grind off or cut off later. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to clamp them together, and I'm using a scrap piece of steel to help even out the pressure. And the point behind that is these are pretty thin scales that are all attached together, and those little points where the clamps are touching would be the areas where it pinched together real well, but the epoxy could actually hold the rest of the stuff apart or space it out, and you end up with a weird wave. And with the crisp lines that we're going for with these scales, we want everything to be perfectly even, parallel, and flat. I will tell you that one of the things that I had to do was adjust these scales a lot in this little process, because every layer was trying to shift different directions, and I just had to sit there and keep moving it and adjusting it and moving it and adjusting it, until I got to the point to where on one of them I had to go ahead and put some clamps on here so that it would stop trying to shift out. So that's what I'm doing right there. But once I put the clamp on it, it ended up staying exactly where it needed to be, and we were good to go. So whenever we're cleaning off all the excess and starting to square these up, one of the things you want to make sure that you do is that you are paying attention to the temperature of everything. So you want to check it with your thumb a little bit, make sure you're not getting too hot, because copper gets hot very easily and it will melt the glue that's in between all the layers. Just be careful. Now I do this on most of my scales. I just put a piece of tape on one side of them. It helps keep them together, keep them even while we start doing some of the beginning steps in these, which is scribing the outline of the tang onto the scales. This is going to do a couple of things. This is going to tell us where we need to cut the excess off of. Also, while we are drilling our pinholes, we have a nice reference point the whole entire time to make sure that we are putting the scales in the right area on the tang. So once we get that done, go over to the drill press, and we're using a 3/16 drill bit because we'll be using 3/16 copper pins. And we'll tell you this, if you use both the 3/16 drill bit and 3/16 pins, you will have to go through and open it up just a little bit more, because the 3/16 pin is going to be slightly larger than the hole. So there's something to know there. Now, once we got that done, we got our pins put in just to keep everything even, we go ahead, go to the porta bandsaw and start cutting off all the excess. I will tell you, dealing with anything that has copper in it like this, it has a little bit of an extra just pain in the butt, because that copper grabs everything as you're going through and working with it. It's kind of annoying, but we're going to have a cool result when it's all said and done. And I do cut back to the actual scribed line, because I don't want to have to grind hardly any of this, primarily because grinding on G10 is super messy and I'm not trying to have that all over my shop, so I tend to cut off a lot with the porta bandsaw. Now we just want to go through and kind of square everything out to make it a little bit easier to do the steps after we do all the glue up and everything. And I'm going to go through and smooth everything. I'm not really trying to focus on getting every little thing perfect, because we're going to end up working on these after the glue up, but I do want to get some of the stuff finished up so that it's not super rough whenever I am doing the glue up. Now we're going to go ahead and shape the front of the scales. This is going to be the area that's going to meet the ricasso. I wanted a pretty steep angle on this, so I wanted to go ahead and figure out exactly how I want this to look, because this is going to set up the rest of the scale shaping. I want to see how much copper I can actually expose to make sure that I can get the copper lines to run throughout the entire scale. So it's just kind of playing with it, seeing how it looks, making sure it's even, and then I go through and I hand sand this whole entire area, and I went all the way up to 2000 grit on this. And the point behind that was because, well, I want these things to look really, really shiny after I buff them, and everything to stand out. My goal is to make the copper stand out as much as possible. So I did go through all the sanding papers all the way up to 2000. And now we're going to go ahead and buff it. And this is just my buffing wheel with the green compound on it. And this buffs really well. I'll show you in the end here. Alright, so I want to give y'all a close-up of this because I am so excited about it. Check that out. I love that. It's subtle, but just nice and bright. Like, this is how much it stands out with the dull black. Think about how much all this stuff is going to stand out whenever we polish it all like this. And whenever we shape everything, those copper lines are going to show up on the sides. And it's going to give you that depth, those layers right there. Oh, I can't wait to see how this is going to look. Between that, having the copper pins, and then having the layers of the 15 and 20 and the copper here, and then having the polished blade with the dark scales, that contrast is going to be, that's going to be so cool. I know that I could have done some crazy burl wood or something like that, but I wanted to make something that contrasted really well, but still went with the theme of the knife. And I think that this is going to go real well with that. I think it's going to achieve what I planned on achieving with this. I'm excited to see what y'all think about these. Now, in the next episode, we're going to attach these and shape them and get the handle scales finished out. So that's what we're going to do on Sunday. We're going to have that fully done, and y'all will get to see the end result of the scales. It's going to be pretty cool. So I'm excited about this. I was hoping that it would work out like this, and it is working out like I was hoping. So really cool. Now, guys, thank y'all for coming by. That is the end of this one. If y'all would, give this video a thumbs up, share this video or one of my other videos, and if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell so you get notified of all the stuff we have that's coming up. Remember, you know, subscribe, because we got a giveaway night that's going to be coming up, and we got a certain mark that we're going to hit to be able to make sure we do that giveaway. Guys, thank y'all for coming by. Thank y'all for spending your time with me. Y'all have an amazing day. Stay safe, and I'll catch y'all next time.